Good evening, all. This is Miguel Aleixo from BRIKbc projects. Another week, another Twitter space, our BRIK Q&A that we do weekly. So welcome people who join us live. Blockchain John, C3 Media, thank you for joining live. We just wait a few minutes to let people join us to catch up if they want to join us live. This has been recorded as well. The video version of it we'll be putting up on our YouTube channel or BRIKbc projects, so you can have audio here on Twitter Space, obviously. I'll also be putting up on Spotify the audio version, and so people can hear it, view it, however they like in their own time if they don't get a chance to join us live. Thank you so much, Blockchain John. Always a great supporter of us in terms of what we do, and C3 Media as well. So fantastic to join us. Today's topics, it's USDC, and in terms of what does it mean from a stable coin perspective, given the dramas of the Silicon Valley Bank going bust as of last Friday, and the dramas and the US government coming in to rescue it. So we'll be talking about that in terms of, obviously, from our perspective here at BRIKbc Projects and tokenizing real estate. What does it mean from us, given that obviously we take payments in USDC as our stable coin that we use. So we'll be talking about that. And while we wait, just sort of reflecting back in the past week, what's been happening. There was a great celebration of International Women's Day. They do play an important part in society, as we all have great admiration for what they do in business, in our lives, our partners, our daughters, our sisters, and so last week actually we did post some Twitter posts and across our social medias in celebrating International Women's Day. Actually, there was a walk here in Brisbane. Actually, it was also a raising funds for breast cancer. So it was a walk. We didn't get a chance because we were actually tied up, Melinda and I. But did actually take some snapshots and put it up, walking along our famous Story Bridge here in Brisbane. Some streets were closed, and so it was a fantastic celebration of International Women's Day over the weekend here in Brisbane. On the negative side, there was a rate rise here in Australia, interest rate rise by our Reserve Bank of 0.25. We are now sitting at 3.6% cash rate. The Reserve Bank governor seems to think that it can get inflation between 3 and 4% here in Australia. Again, he's been grilled. There's actually even been some suggestions that his term coming at the end of September here, that maybe he won't get another term, given some of the things that have been playing out. And personally, without getting too politically, I've lost a lot of confidence in our Reserve Bank governor here in Australia, when he actually admitted that maybe they made a mistake taking interest rates, the cash rate too low during COVID. It almost touched zero. They didn't quite make it zero, but the suggestions by him, maybe that he did make a mistake, but the board made a mistake of taking it too low, because I think they've been too aggressive in terms of how they've gone in terms of trying to control inflation through this, through the clunky handle that they use to control inflation called interest rate controls. But anyway, that's a story for another time. But we did have one during the week, last week. Some great things that have been, some great content's been posted out there during the week from Mark Fiddleman. We actually had Mark on our weekly What is Real Estate Tokenization show around 4 weeks ago. I had Mark on our show talking about tokenized real estate, and Mark also has his YouTube channel. He actually had a sit down with Tron Black. It was actually published yesterday, which we also tweeted on our posts here at BRIKbc. So great sit down with Tron. Tron, as always, is for those people that don't know, Tron Black is the lead developer and and also one of the co-founders of the Ravencoin blockchain, and is actually the current president of the Ravencoin Foundation. So he sat down with Mark, and they talked about what Ravencoin's all about. And as I said, Tron has a way of simplifying in terms of explaining what the Ravencoin blockchain is all about and the fundamentals of it, and why is it different from other blockchains, especially when it comes to tokenizing assets on it. So yes, it was a great viewing of that. Again, highly recommended. We did put it up. We retweeted, so highly recommend as a view. It's only short, it's only 25 minutes. Also seen that Indy Bose just popped in. Hello, Indy. Thank you for joining us live. Always very appreciative. And also a big shout out to Ravencoin developers out there that continue to build, that continue to find solutions in terms of trying to, again, people that are obviously using Ravencoin for projects, and there's some great smart developers involved with Ravencoin, and they keep coming up with great solutions. Again, in a continual discussion, there was actually one earlier on today on actually his Blockchain John C3 Media on his Discord channel with some developers there. So it was a great chat earlier today. So I really enjoyed that chat. I'm not a developer myself, but I always enjoy learning about in terms of the fundamentals and some of the tech key things that I always walk away with some sort of gold nuggets from those discussions, and great interaction with great people involved. So shout out to the Ravencoin developers that keep developing, they keep building, and again, it's great to see. Yeah, look, in terms of, it's 9 past now. We'll make sure make a formal start without being too formal. So I'll try to have a bit of structure to each BRIK Q&A every week, and again, just a bit of introduction. I'm Miguel Aleixo. I'm the Manager Director and co-founder of BRIKbc Projects. We tokenize real estate properties here in Australia, particularly focusing Brisbane, Gold Coast, and the Sunshine Coast. We focus on single-family homes, where they tend to be more of a luxury at the upper end of the market, and in sort of high-end areas in terms of where they're located. So we have currently 2 properties, the BRIK Koala property, which is here at Brisbane property, based at Hamilton, and also the Gold Coast property, the BRIK Dolphin property, and the BRIK Dolphin's actually at Mermaid Beach, which is another high-end area on the Gold Coast. So again, we tend to stick to those prestige areas where we see quite a niche and obviously up value in the future, and not just now, in terms of what's been happening of late, and obviously where we see the future in terms of upward increase in values, given obviously we've got the 2032 Olympics here in Brisbane, which will take into Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, where some of the events are also going to be held. So we'll have an impact in those other areas outside of Brisbane, as I said, with the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast. So, but yeah, look, in terms of tokenized real estate, it's basically having the ability for anybody from anywhere in the world to be able to access the benefits of real estate. That traditional real estate don't offer that to, especially to the everyday person who's trying to increase a portfolio of real estate property, and the clunkiness of banks, and in terms of increasing values of properties. It's becoming harder and harder for the everyday person, not just in Australia but around the world, to be able to start investing into real estate property, or even to accumulate more investment property. So again, this is where tokenized real estate, that people can actually just have a fraction of a property to record it on a blockchain, a public register that's able to be seen by everybody. Can't change it once it's on there. It can't be changed. So it's just tokenizing, having a fraction, but now it's actually visible also on a blockchain that anybody has the ability to buy and sell on a secondary market, to be able to have that ability to access their funds in a very simple way, as opposed to traditional way where you can only buy a whole property or hold a whole property, or sell a whole property, but there's nothing in between. So I guess in terms of tokenized real estate on the blockchain, offers people the flexibility, more liquidity, and just the ease of actually having to, if you want it, you have it now, as opposed to waiting, 30, 40, 60 days sometimes in traditional real estate. So that's sort of in a nutshell in terms of what tokenized real estate is all about. Today, I sort of want to hone in on the topic around in terms of USDC, in terms of stablecoin, how in terms that plays in terms of what we're doing when people do buy our property tokens using USDC stablecoin. So probably just again, the fundamentals of what is a stablecoin. So people, when they buy our property tokens, they use either a USDC or Raven coin if it's the Dolphin property. But the reason that we chose a stable coin is making sure that when people actually, obviously people buying the property tokens, making sure when it comes time to settle that property, we've actually got that set amount of money to buy the property. So using the BRIK Dolphin, for example, it's a $2.6 million total selling of tokens. So just making sure when it comes time to actually settle on that property, we've actually got $2.6 million. So what the stable coin does is basically the USDC, for example. I mean, there's many stable coins out there, some backed based on US dollars, some backed on the euro, some in pounds. But just that in terms of USDC that we use, so basically one USDC is equal to $1 US, and that's basically the stability around it. So it doesn't matter what the crypto market does, that USDC, one USDC is always equal to $1 US. So for us, it's important that now when somebody buys one of our BRIK Dolphin tokens today, is making sure tomorrow we still got that $1. If it's $1 that they buy, if it's obviously using the Dolphin, it's an $80 token. So making sure when somebody buys that $80 token, BRIK Dolphin token for $80, making sure tomorrow we still actually got that $80 in the bank in terms of $80 worth. It doesn't change regardless what the crypto market does. As we know, crypto market can be volatile. So the last thing we want to do is basically have the, people, person buys today and tomorrow it might go up 10 or 15% in terms of some of the cryptocurrencies, and be in a situation that we haven't actually got that value there. So the stable coin and gives that stability. So that making sure that $80 today is still $80 tomorrow. So again, we researched in terms of a few years ago, around 2.5 years ago, as to which stable coin we were going to use, and what made USDC attractive to us is actually it is backed by actual US dollars or US treasuries. So and because there's different ways. We saw some that basically got de-pegged, meaning that it was no longer 1:1. We had the situation last year with the Terra version of the stablecoin. So with the USDC, we basically done my research and came about in terms of it's owned by Coinbase, is actually the ones behind the USDC. So Circle, which is the owner of the USDC, but Circle is owned by the Coinbase. But in terms of what I liked about USDC was basically they print out a report each month. So they have an accounting firm, one of the top tier accounting firms, Deloitte Accountants, issues out an independent accountants monthly report stating in terms of what actually is the reserves behind that the USDC. So at the moment, USDC, there's around 43.48. Actually put a tweet, I've actually got on the pinned tweets. At the moment, there's actually, as of January, there was $43.48 billion worth of USDC in circulation. And the reserves backing that was slightly more, was $43.53 billion. So that was made up of cash in the bank and also some US short-term treasuries. So that's what backed the USDC coin. And again, as I said, in terms of, I've got the links there in the pinned tweet. I think it might be the last one up there, the last pinned tweet I've got there. I've got links to Coinbase, and from there, there's a link in terms of to the actual reports, and it states out the Deloitte's report. There's the last one was actually January that was done. So you can see that it's got in terms of the very detailed as to what's backing those what the treasuries in terms of the US short-term treasuries and the cash in the bank that backs as those reserves. So for me, that was actually quite important to have that external verification. Look, there's been obviously issues in the past in terms of audit firms, accounting firms not doing the right thing. But again, given what it is, it does give you some comfort because I mean, obviously, sort of having an accounting background myself, being a CPA, I sort of do know some of the changes that have happened over the years in some of the audit firms and some of the collapses, especially during the GFC crisis that happened in terms of some of the audit firms, some of the irregular activities that happened, and so that the industry was forced to make a lot of changes, especially with auditors. And these days, auditing firms must circulate to different auditors every 3 years with public listed companies. And so there's a lot of spotlight in terms of auditors doing the right thing. Is it going to happen again? Some of the collapses and obviously some of the audit firms having a role in not doing the right thing. Look, there might be. We don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of those things that. But again, the industry continues to put more compliance around it in terms of addressing issues that happened in the past to making sure it doesn't happen again. But as I said, in terms of what I like about this, there's a monthly report that's put out and it shows in terms of what's actually the reserves backing USDC. But we had a bit of a dilemma in terms of even with all the things that all those reserves, there was actually a bit of a dilemma. So last week, we actually had the Silicon Valley Bank over there in US. It went bust. It was closed down last Friday. I'm not going to go into the details as to what, but the issue around in terms of USDC was basically they actually had some of their funds, some of their cash was one. I mean, they have a few across different banking institutions, but one of those banking institutions where they actually held $3.3 billion of cash in this Silicon Valley Bank. And what happened with that was basically the uncertainty as to whether they were going to be able to get hold of those funds was a major issue. And that basically caused the USDC what is called a depegging. So meaning that actually the value of one USDC went down to 87 cents. So it's always supposed to be 1:1, but it actually went down to 87 cents. Again, when you sort of work out the figures roughly, given that out of the $43.4 billion in circulation, and if you've got $3.3 billion in cash at risk, it's always going to cause that issue in terms of, even if you haven't got that $3.3 billion out of the reserves, if you lose that, obviously it has to have an impact on the 1:1 valuation. And that's what happened last Friday. But since Friday, the US government, including the Federal Reserve Bank and the related parties within the government, came out and actually said no, that they were actually backed in terms of all deposits made by companies, people, that the bank, the US government's going to basically back those deposits. So again, massive relief. And actually, I heard earlier on John's show, someone actually saying that I mean those funds were supposed to be available on Monday, but obviously given the massive rush, and obviously quite a few people wanted to get their hands on their money, it's obviously been a bit of a delay. I know someone was saying on John's show early today that they still haven't been able to access the funds, so there must be a bit of a massive lineup to get hold of their funds. So again, the US government has come out, they will back those funds, those deposits. So again, the USDC is actually back to 1:1. So again, it's again a very scary moment, and again it's I mean from our perspective, just coming back to us using USDC, for us it's only temporarily. It might only be 1 or 2 days. So basically, once we receive USDC, we actually put that into cash in the fiat. I know it's not the best way. But at the moment, while we're still going through a transition between the real world assets and digital assets, we want to make sure that comes time we've got that money sitting in the bank account ready to sell on the property. So we actually don't hold the funds in USDC. It's only just a temporary way in terms of what might be at most 2 days where we do actually receive it, and we then actually put that into a fiat bank account, a fiat bank account that as part of our business. So again, it was unheard of that a USDC backed at 1:1 by cash would actually be in that situation, but we had that situation, and I think it taught obviously in terms of the blockchain industry a massive lesson in terms of what actually can occur, even though it's supposed to be stable. And again, just the risk in terms of even just bank accounts. So I think just emphasize in terms of diversification of bank accounts, especially some of these bank accounts, more so in the US, that I believe in terms of some of the more secondary sort of type banks where they don't actually have to have reserves backing their deposits, which I think in the case of Silicon Valley, that was the case. I think some of the big banks, I think they have to have reserves. I know in Australia here, they have to have reserves as part of their banking license here in Australia. Given that we went through in terms of GFC here and some of the things that came out of that in terms of banks must have the reserves, and there's got to be insurance in place and so forth. So so again, obviously every country is different, but again, I think the lesson learned there in terms of, especially with the stable coins, is that although it's a stable 1:1, but again, just no doubt there'll be some lessons, especially for the companies that are running the stable coins, in terms of the diversification, in terms of the bank accounts and the type of US treasuries that if it's a US dollars backed, in terms of what they're actually having and the diversification across different institutions. I think that is a massive lesson out of this. So I think I've covered in terms of why we use the stablecoin, and again, as I said, in terms of for us, although it's not ideal, but as we sort of, I like to think in terms of as we go forward in a few years' time, that we have a bit more stability in terms of the cryptocurrencies and especially with stable coins, and having the ability to actually hold those in digital currency as opposed to going back to fiat. So again, but I think as we go throughout this transition, especially from a tokenized real estate perspective, I think it's important still to have that ability to having those funds there in the bank account to be able to settle on the property. I think the stable coin was a massive. This with USDC, I think, as I said, it's been a massive learning curve. That even holding those is not going to sort of guarantee you that those funds are going to be there in USDC. So that's all the points I wanted to cover. I'll open it up for any questions and answers. If people want to come up, I do have some questions that come through the week that I always raise here, but I always put a priority for the people that have made their time to join live to be able to ask questions. Again, it's a very great way to, if there's any things that you're not sure about in terms of what we're doing here at BRIKbc, or we want to sort of ask anything in terms of our vision and what some of the things are going in the future, by all means, it's an open book. As I always say, we are an open book. So again, transparency is critical in terms of what we do, and always open for any question. And if I can't answer straight away, I will come back to you. I did actually have one come through the week, again, in terms of very topical in terms of how we take payments using USDC. And the question was, how come we only use USDC and Ravencoin for people to pay for our property tokens? We also, although we use a stable coin, we also have Ravencoin for the Gold Coast property, because the Gold Coast property was tokenized on the Ravencoin blockchain. And obviously, being heavily involved with Ravencoin, it's always important that I'm always abreast in terms of what's happening with Ravencoin, and obviously given the great people in the community, in the Ravencoin community, that always keeps us up to date in terms of from all different angles, vertical and horizontals, in terms of what's happening on the Ravencoin blockchain. So again, having that great grasp of what's happening in Ravencoin is important, and that's why we allow people to use Ravencoin, the native token, to be able to pay for their BRIK Dolphin tokens if they want to use that. But again, as I said, we always convert that back to fiat to make sure that those funds in the account come time to settle on the property. Also, shout out to Raven Rebels who's joining us live. Thank you for joining us live. Much appreciated. But yeah, look, that was one of the questions. Again, if there's any other question from the audience, by all means, I'll give you the mic. Want to ask anything? Or else we'll start wrapping up. Keeping it short.